Okay, welcome to week 5, the learning assignments, the tutorial videos. The first video I'm going to do is kind of a little short review before we get into two-step inequalities. I'm just going to kind of quickly review. It's kind of reviewing the first video that you should have watched, but if you happen to not watch it, I'm going to kind of go through kind of some example problems real quick before we get into these. So that you understand what it's meant by an inequality. So before we even get into any of that stuff, an inequality is literally just a comparison between two numbers. So we'll get into these steps in a second. I'm going to move the paper up real quick just to kind of use some scratch paper to show what I'm going to talk about. So now, an inequality is literally just a comparison of two numbers. So let's say we have, 5 is less than 6. So this is our inequality, the less than. Is 5 less than 6? Yes, it is. Let's just kind of spitball in here. 4 is less than 3. Is 4 less than 3? No, it is not. So these inequalities, and we can interchange these with, these are less than. We can do greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. So there's 4 different types of inequalities. And then on top of that, we already know the equal sign, so just the equality sign, like this, 4 is equal to 4. Well, yeah, that's true. So really, these symbols right here are just comparing two numbers. Now, these equations that we're about to solve, we're solving these before our end goal of graphing them. And this week, what I really want to focus on is we're going to understand what does it mean to be an inequality, how can we solve them, how can we graph them, and then after that, I'm going to show you something cool on Desmos. So I won't get into that just yet, but we're really trying to get to how can we graph inequalities. And this is new stuff. So this is chapter 9. So this would be chapter 9 in our book. It would have been the chapter that we would have started like right when we got back. But unfortunately, we're not getting back this year. So anyways, this is chapter 9 stuff. We'll go over it for the remainder of the school, and that'll be it. Okay, so let's get into two-step inequalities. Now, before that, let's kind of just look at the steps to solve inequalities. These are the same steps on solving equations, and I'll show you an example very similar to this one right here in a second. Isolate the variable, and these are very like kind of vague steps for you, but I'll show you just kind of how easy it is to kind of get back in that mindset of solving equations. Isolate the variable, and then graph the solution. So these number lines right here, if you can see that, I hope you can see that, zoomed in enough. These number lines right here will represent our solution to our inequality. So I'll show you that in a second. But before we get into the inequalities, let's use a more simple example that's very similar to this. 2x plus 4 equals, so I'm changing this. It's very similar to this one right here. So this is actually the same problem that you were, going to do for this week's assignment. I'm doing the first one. So instead of the greater than or equal to right here, I'm using the equal sign because I want to show you the same steps apply for solving these ones. So equals 24. Now, our steps to solve the inequalities are the same as the ones for equal sign. Isolate the variable. That means we want this x by itself at the end of our steps. To get there, we got to do the opposite operations. Meaning, the first thing we have to do is we have to get this 4 grouped over here with the other number, because these are two numbers, 4 and 24. Those are two numbers. They're like terms, things that are alike. They're both numbers. Now this 2 is a number as well, but it's attached with this variable. So we don't want to move this. We don't want to change anything with the 2x just yet. So what we do to move the 4 over here to the other side of the equal sign, the opposite operation, this is plus, so we subtract from both sides. So 4 minus 4, 0. 24 minus 4 equals 20. And then this 2x drops down. We have 2x equals 20. Now at this point, you might be thinking, well, 2 times what number is 20? Well, that's 10. Or if you didn't see that, and you have to use another step, it's just, this is 2 times some number is 10 or equals 20. Well, 20 divided by this number will give us that unknown number. So we divide by both sides. Notice here, it was a plus 4, and then we subtracted both sides. Here it's a 2 times x. Then we divide by 2 to get the x variable by itself. 20 divided by 2 is 10. And the 2's disappear because it's 2 divided by 2 is 1. I'm not going to put a 1 there, but it's 1. We don't usually put a 1 in front of this x right here because we can just say that is 1x. So we have x equals 10. Now that is our solution to when we have an equation with an equality sign. There's one solution for this equation. Now how that looks on a number line, so we have a number line, and let's say we're at 10, here's 11, 12, 9, and 8, and we want to graph our solution. Well, what would our graph on a number line look like with x equals 10? Think about it when you're plotting points for a line. So when you have solutions, you plot multiple points, right? Well, this is 1 point, x equals 10. So this is the x-axis, by the way. So x equals 10, we just plot a point at 10. And that point represents this solution. Now it's going to look a little bit different with these inequality signs up here because it's going to be more than just 1 point. And so let's do the first one together. So I'm going to do 2x plus 4 is greater than or equal to 24. So it's going to be super similar to this, but the solution is going to look a little bit different. So this is number 1. Right here. Okay, number 1. 2x plus 4 greater than or equal to 24. So isolate the variable. We're going to do, it's going to be almost the exact same steps. Subtract 4 from both sides. 4 minus 4 is nothing. 24 minus 4, still 20. And then we have that 2x over here. And then again, we're going to divide by 2 from both sides to isolate that x variable. We're dividing because that's the opposite of this multiplication problem right here, or multiplication that's going on between the 2 and the x. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and we just are left with an x greater than or equal to. So notice this is different from the equal. 20 divided by 10, or 2 is 10. Now we isolated the variable. We have to come back here and now graph the solution. So on our number line, it looks like this one goes from like 3 to like 13. I'm just looking at this number line up here. And in the middle, it's 8. Here's 10. Just kind of filling out the number line without having to put a bunch of stuff. Yeah, pretty much the whole thing anyways. Okay, so now, how to graph this solution right here. Basically, it's which numbers are greater than or equal to 10. Well, what number is equal to 10? Up here, we had x equals 10. Well, what number is equal to 10? 10 is. So we're going to put a point right there. Well, what numbers that are also greater than 10? So over here on our number line, is 11 greater than 10? Yep. Is 12 greater than 10? Yep. Is 13? So on and so forth. We would have a bunch of points going out forever to the right. So I'm going to actually make this dot above so you can see. So this dot represents that dot at 10 because 10 is equal to 10. And then now all of these infinite dots that I have to the right, what I'm going to do is instead of just putting a bunch of dots, I'm going to draw a line. Because from this point, 10, and on, we have a bunch of solutions to this inequality. And here's how it works. So 10 is greater than 10, or 10 is greater than or equal to 10. That's true. Is 11 greater than or equal to 10? Yeah, 11 is greater than 10. Now let's just try an 8. Is 8, and I'm just plugging numbers into this x value to see what works. Is 8 greater than or equal to 10? No, it's not, because it's less than. So 8 doesn't work, 5 doesn't work, 3 doesn't work. So none of these ones to the left work, all the ones to the right work. So that's how we graph our solution. Now notice the steps are the almost exact same thing. The only thing that's different is the graphing part. And it's because this is interpreted differently from the equal sign. So let me take a second. I'm going to get set up for the next part.